This is Jennifer Gonzalez welcoming you to episode 60 of the Cult of Pedagogy podcast. In this episode, I'm going to share my picks for 6 EdTech tools you should try in 2017. For the past 2 years, I have written and published something I call the Teacher's Guide to Tech. I think of it like an EdTech encyclopedia, a catalog of tools designed to help take the overwhelm out of technology. All the tools are grouped into categories, so the assessment tools are all together, the flipped learning tools are all together, and so on. For every tool that I feature, I give you a screenshot of the tool in action. I link you right to the tool's website. I give you a complete description in plain English, and I link you directly to a video that demonstrates how the tool works. And because the whole thing is packaged up in one single interactive PDF, you can click from section to section at lightning speed. It's something you can keep on your work computer, your home computer, and even on all your devices, so you can look things up quickly no matter where you are. To keep the guide fresh, every year I go in and update it. I add some new tools that have come along, I omit tools that have faded away, and I make sure that all the links and information are still accurate. It is a crap ton of work, I'll tell you that right now, but the end result is pretty phenomenal. And now my 2017 guide is ready. It's fully redesigned this year to make it even easier to use, and I have added over 30 new tools and a few new categories like math, special ed, content libraries, makerspaces, and comic strip creators. I think you're absolutely going to love it. To get a preview of the guide and get your own copy, visit teachersguidetotech.com. Now, part of what I do every year to launch the new guide is to choose 6 tools I think more teachers need to know about. These aren't necessarily brand new tools, but none of them has gotten so popular that everyone already knows about them. And I think each one does something so unique they could make a significant impact on a teacher's work. So I'm going to share my picks with you in just a minute. Before I start, I'd like to thank Kiddom for sponsoring this episode. Kiddom is a free platform that helps you personalize learning for every student. A lot of teachers love the idea of personalized learning, but without the right tools, it's still just a buzzword. With Kiddom, teachers gain access to an unlimited library of standards-aligned content, coupled with beautiful, actionable reports to see exactly which standards need more work and which students need more help. To learn more, visit cultofpedagogy.com/Kiddom, Kiddom. I also want to thank you for the reviews you've left for this podcast on iTunes. These reviews really help bring new listeners to the show, and I read every one of them. If you're enjoying this podcast and you haven't left a review yet, I would love it if you would take a few minutes, head over to iTunes, and tell me what you think. Thank you so much. Okay, here we go. 6 tech tools to check out for 2017. Okay, the first tool is Nearpod, Nearpod. And you can find it at nearpod.com. Now, this is a presentation tool, and this one is definitely not brand new, and I have heard of it from other teachers, but I don't think enough teachers are using it yet, so I really wanted to put it on its list because it's so amazing what this thing does, and they've added a couple of new features in the last year that have made it even more incredible. So let me explain to you what Nearpod does. So imagine that you've got a presentation that you're going to give. Like, imagine it's just like a regular PowerPoint, okay? Except instead of standing in front of a class, you're sitting in a seat with your kids facing you in a circle. You're all sitting in a group, and everybody has a tablet. So you start running your presentation from your own tablet, and it appears on all of your students' tablets too, okay? So they can all already see it right in front of them, which already adds an element of sort of immediacy where they're not looking at it from far away, they're looking at it right in front of them. But then what Nearpod does is it allows you to add interactivity to it. You can add an open-ended question that students have to respond to at a certain point. You can add a poll or a quiz or a drawing activity where students have to sketch or diagram something. And when they respond on their own tablets, you see their responses on your own. So that is in essence what Nearpod is. It's these interactive lessons that you can give from your own device, and it's sort of projected out to everybody else's, and they can interact with it. That's already amazing. But what they've done recently is they've added 2 new features that make it even more incredible. One is Nearpod 3D, which is this library of, they've got over 100 stunning 3D objects that can be used in Nearpod lessons. So they've got like 3D visions of sort of human body parts, like when you're looking at those diagrams of the human body where you see the bones and the muscles, like they've got these that you can add to lessons. There's a lot of sort of animal and insect ones where you can get really, really up close to things. So there's the Nearpod 3D. That's another great feature. And they've also recently added virtual reality, which is they're just calling Nearpod VR. And this allows you to add virtual field trips to over 100 different locations to your Nearpod lessons. So it's just really incredible. They have a free option that's a little bit limited, but it definitely gives you an opportunity to try it out. But I could see, schools really wanting to get the paid version of this. And I'm not going to talk about price in this because Tech Tools pricing changes all the time. But if I mention one in here that doesn't have any kind of a free option, then I'll add that. But just assume that all of these have a way of basically checking it out and using it for free. So the first one is Nearpod, and that's nearpod.com, nearpod.com. All right, the second tool is called Planboard, Planboard, and this is a lesson planning tool. And you will find it at planboardapp.com. So the word Planboard and then app at the end.com. This is just a lesson planning tool, which sounds really simple, but I'm not aware of anything else out there that does what this does. I think a lot of schools and districts already have their own sort of lesson planning software that they use, and some of them might be this good. But I just wanted to let everybody know about this because I have a feeling a lot of teachers are still doing their lesson plans in some sort of like a Microsoft Word template or something like that. And if you could switch to this, I think you would really love it. So the way that these work is you sort of get like a calendar, okay? And sort of imagine that each calendar day is like a block of time. And you can go in and you can add your lessons, and within each module, within each cell, it's a full text editor. So you can add bulleted lists, you can add horizontal lines to break up sections, you can format the text size and the color. So it's almost like every individual cell is like its own little Microsoft Word document, but then you can move them around. So suppose you end up not getting to this lesson on a certain day. You can just grab that cell and just drag it to another part of your calendar. You can also, within your lesson plan, you can add links to outside resources. You can embed videos right in that little cell. You can also attach files for things that you're going to need that day. So it's this little cell is really powerful, and obviously it opens up onto your full screen, but then you can kind of close it and it just appears on your calendar. And I love the way you can drag it around and move it because everybody knows that plans do not go as planned. You can also add standards with a click of a button, and they've got lots and lots of different standards, not just Common Core, but a lot of other types of standards too, and I think they keep adding them. Here's the neat thing though. You add a standard to your lesson or a substandard, Planboard will actually keep track of which standards you've covered and let you see sort of reports of which ones you've included in your lessons so that you can manage, which ones you still have to get to. Another thing that's really neat is you can repeat a semester. So if you are somebody who teaches semester-long courses and you want to just copy one over to the next semester, you can do that with just a few clicks. Finally, the other great thing about this is that it's also a mobile app. So you can do this in your classroom and then you can do it when you're waiting, in line at the grocery store from your phone. You can continue working and it all is going to sync up. So this is just one that's definitely worth checking out. It is also free. So that is number 2. That is planboardapp.com. The third one is called Slack. And this is another one that is not brand new, especially not brand new to the business world, but I am going to start pushing teachers, especially administrators and teachers, to try using this with each other. Here's what Slack does. It's slack.com. It is just basically a discussion tool. So if you imagine that you have any kind of like a chat room, where think back to the old days where there were chat rooms and you could just open it up and people would talk about stuff. So you can have these written chats with people. And it basically, when you open up a Slack account, what you have is sort of a series of channels along the left, and all of these channels are different conversations that you're having with people. So if I get in touch with my friend, Trisha, and she and I have this conversation, like that's going to be one chat that's along the side. And then if we want to, have a group conversation with me and Trisha and 2 other people, we can create another channel just for that. We can have open channels. If I work at a school and I want to have one that's sort of everybody in the school, there can be almost like a public chat for like messages and announcements. That could be another one. You can have private channels and public channels. And basically what it looks like whenever you click on a channel is you just get, it's almost like the comments on somebody's Facebook post that just stack one on top of each other. And you can also, within this conversation, you can attach files. You can pull somebody aside for a side discussion. It's just a really interesting way of having a conversation. I don't even know if I'd say interesting, really convenient. Because again, this is sort of synced across different devices, so you can go in and take care of business at any time. And so this is my information to you from the business world, because this is already being used in a lot of big companies. And I really think a lot of schools should be, and I know that some schools are moving to Slack for in-house communication between teachers and principal instead of doing it through email. What you get is this nice platform where it's not as hidden as emails are, and it's also just a more convenient place for keeping all of your conversations together. It would also be a great tool to have your students use when they're working on group projects, or participating in clubs, or student government or sports teams, and anything where they have to stay in touch with each other and their teacher. You can set up a Slack channel for that, and then everybody can get their notifications on these conversations. Not only would this be a useful thing for teaching kids to use just for their schoolwork, but how great would it be if your high school senior graduates and moves on and goes out into college and into the work world, and their first place they get hired on for an internship or whatever, they say, oh, we use Slack for communication, and they can say, oh, I already know what that is. We use that at school. So again, preparing them for life after school. So this is just I could see this becoming a really, really useful tool for a lot of reasons. That is slack.com. Alrighty, I think we are at number 4. This one is called PeerGrade, PeerGrade. And here's the important thing you need to know about this. When you go to look it up, it is peergrade.io, not .com. There is something else called peergrade.com. I don't know what it is. That's not what this is. You need to go to peergrade.io. This is a peer review tool. And I used to be an English teacher, so I would have loved this. So we want students to read each other's work and give feedback to each other. And it's not easy to do. It's just not easy to manage it. It's not easy to supervise it. It's also not even that easy to teach kids how to give good feedback. And a lot of times you want it to be anonymous. And that's also hard to accomplish. So PeerGrade sort of helps take care of all this. What it does is it allows students to turn their work into this platform, and then PeerGrade will basically shuffle them up and it'll redistribute them to different students anonymously, and then they can give their feedback right on the platform. The person who gets the feedback doesn't know who it came from. And so you as a teacher can sort of look over the whole process and see who has given who feedback. You can set deadlines, like by this time everybody needs to have submitted their work and given feedback so that it doesn't kind of go on and on forever. And another nice sort of, little feature is that students can rate each other on their feedback. So if I am really good at giving people feedback, I will actually get scored on that by my peers. And teachers could even, give their students maybe not even a grade for this, but this can become a part of your profile as a learner. How good are you at giving other students feedback? I mean, collaboration is an important 21st century skill, and giving feedback to your teammates is an important part of collaboration. So I just think it's really interesting that there's that extra piece there that you can rate the feedback given to you, and students sort of accrue a score for themselves as feedback givers. And these will also make really good mini lessons in a class. And this wouldn't just be useful in a language arts class. I could see this being used in any class where you're doing sort of Genius Hour or project-based learning, because it doesn't even have to just be a writing piece. It could be a project proposal or something like that that gets submitted. It doesn't have to be, an essay that's getting feedback. So, and another thing is, in addition to rating your feedback that you get from people, you can also flag problematic comments. So if there's any concern about kids abusing this, other kids can basically flag them. If somebody starts doing stuff that's inappropriate in there or just really hurtful or not helpful, they can be called out by their peers on that. So it's just I think it's been a long time coming, something like that. I think the technology has been there for a long time. It's just that, to my knowledge, no one has put it all together on one platform. So that is peergrade.io. I would definitely check that one out. All right, we are on number 5. And this is another one that I think has been around for a while, but I keep coming across people that have never heard of it. So I wanted to push this one out there too. This is Newsela. It's Newsela. Some people pronounce this News ELA. I try to get my pronunciations from the websites of the tools themselves and listen to their videos and how they say it. They say Newsela, so I'm saying Newsela. This is what I'm calling a content library. And I've got a couple of these in my guide this year of just websites that have sort of made it their mission to collect lots of good content for consuming, whether it's reading or listening, and make it easier for teachers to find what they need. Newsela does that. And here's the problem that Newsela solves for you. Let me describe it. So imagine that you find this really great article that you wanted to share with your students. But when you look at it, you know right away that some of your kids are not going to be able to handle it. Like, it's just too challenging, but it's great. So teachers will either just not give it to some students, they'll just give it to some, or they'll just decide it's not going to work for their students, even though it really would work well for some of them. Or they try to find something kind of similar on a similar topic and kind of differentiate that way, which I would guess can be kind of awkward. Here's what Newsela does. They take articles. These are real news articles that come from the Washington Post, from the Associated Press. They pull these every day. And their staff takes that article and they rewrite it 5 different times. So what you do is, when you find an article, there's a little sidebar that lists the different levels of reading levels. And if you click on the lower ones, what'll happen is that article will change so that the wording gets simpler and simpler until it's down to a fairly simple, low reading level. And when you read these different leveled text, it's basically the same idea. I mean, they do a really good job of converting this into something that still conveys the same basic ideas and the same basic facts, just doesn't use the advanced language, the advanced vocabulary, the advanced sentence composition. I think it's an amazing tool, because what you can do, I mean, I think teachers can approach this in more than one way. I mean, one way would be to say, here is the article, you do this level, you do this level, you do this level. That's one way. That's kind of a teacher-led way of differentiating it. But the next step after that would be to take this same tool and say to the students, look, you can read this exact same article in all these different levels. I want you to choose the one that feels the most comfortable for you. If it starts to feel too difficult, try scaling back a little, see how that feels. And I really think ideally students will read the simpler version and then they will challenge themselves to move to a higher level. And understanding the simpler version will actually help them understand the more difficult version. Almost like it's kind of the way I used to do in college with Shakespeare. I would read the Cliff's Notes and then I would read the Shakespeare because I sort of knew what I was looking for then. Anyway, it's free. It's really, really good And it has articles that are not just, these are news articles, so it would fit into a lot of different content areas. With a pro account, which is what actually costs money, you can actually then track student progress, because these articles come with quizzes and that sort of thing, and you can assign written responses, but you could get a whole lot of mileage just out of a free account. So if you're looking for really good quality nonfiction reading that you can actually change the reading level on, I would definitely check out Newsela. That's NEWSELA.com. Alrighty, and the last tool, I believe I've gotten all the way down. Yes, the last tool is called Sketchboard. This is Sketchboard, SKETCHBOARD.io. Again, this has the .io suffix. So here's what Sketchboard is. This one is pretty obscure, and it doesn't seem to have a whole lot of followers. So this is going to be the oddball here, just because I don't know of that many people who have heard of it or used it. This is a mind mapping tool. Most of you who have ever used mind mapping tools are probably already familiar with like Poplet or Coggle. Those are both pretty popular ways that you basically making a mind map, like a graphic organizer of your thoughts. But when I found Sketchboard, I thought this one is really, really cool, because there's a few different reasons. One is that the cells, like when you have a cell in like Poplet, it's just a basic sort of oval or, rectangle. Then they're all connected to each other. Well, Sketchboard, first of all, their cells look like sketches, like they actually look handwritten. So that's just kind of a cute thing. It looks more like an actual sketch. But they also offer them in all these different shapes. You can get squares, circles, you can get one that looks like a computer screen, you can get one that's in the shape of a little person. They give you over 50 different icons to choose from. And if you don't like any of them, or if it's just not going to work, you can switch to the freehand tool and just draw the thing yourself. So it ends up actually looking like something that you would make on paper, except it's shareable. You can collaborate with other people, like right in the cloud on it. You could collaborate with somebody who lives in Istanbul if you wanted to. And you can move things around. So unlike on paper, where once you've drawn it, it's there, you can actually pick things up and slide them around until they look the way you want them. You can delete them if they're not working. And it's a really, I think it's more versatile than most mind mapping tools that I've seen. And it's a little more human looking. And this is the part that's really cool. It's integrated with Google Drive. So if you've got a G Suite or a Google account and you work in Drive, you can actually add this as an add-on, and you can create these from right inside the Google environment, and then it'll be stored right in your Drive, and you can go back in and edit it later, and it's sort of part of your Google Drive environment. And it's also integrated with Slack, which is another tool that I just mentioned before. So if you're in a discussion with somebody in Slack and you need to sketch something out for them, you can actually pull Sketchboard in and sketch it right in your conversation and have that there. So I just think this one is worth checking out. I think it's got a lot of potential. It doesn't seem to have a whole lot of users yet, but I just think that it's worth checking out. Okay, so those are the 6. One more time with Sketchboard. It's sketchboard.io. I have a 7th. I didn't mention this at the beginning, and so if you're somebody who listens to my podcast all the way to the end, then you're going to hear about one more. This is an honorable mention. And I didn't include it just because I have a feeling a lot of people already know about it, but I wanted to make sure just in case you don't. So this is part of Google. This is part of the Google Suite. This is if you work in Chrome at all. Google now has something called Cast, C-A-S-T. And I think if you just looked up Google Cast, you would find it. It's very simple. It's not even really a new app. It's just a new capability. Anytime you're in a classroom and you're working with Chrome, your students now have the ability to share their screen with the whole class up on the classroom projector, whatever screen you use to project, whether it's a whiteboard or actually a projector on a screen. They can individually share their screens. All you do is connect your own teacher computer to the projector, and then the students in your room. So for example, if every student in the room is working on something, everybody's trying out some problem, or they're doing some writing, or they're doing some sketching, and you want to be able to see what's on one kid's screen, you can have them go into their Chrome menu and go to where it says Cast. When I say the menu, I mean the little menu in the top right corner. And they can broadcast what's on their screen up to yours. So this is just something to look into. Just look up Google Cast, and I think this has huge implications for the classroom because we want students to be able to share their work with others and show what they're learning and talk about what they just discovered or whatever it is. And instead of having them stand up in front of the class and try to figure out how to explain what's on their screen or walk around and show everybody, they can actually now project it up on the screen. So that's a little bonus. Look up Google Cast. That is everything. Those are my 6 picks plus 1. If you are interested in the Teacher's Guide to Tech, the 2017 version, just go to teachersguidetotech.com. There's no apostrophe in that. It's just teachersguidetotech.com. And for links to all of these tools in this episode, just go to cultofpedagogy.com/pod and click on episode 60. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day. Hey, one last thing. If you are still listening, I have a special offer for anybody who listens to my podcast, and it is for the Teacher's Guide to Tech. If you go to teachersguidetotech.com and you click over to where it's for sale on Teachable, and you enter the code LISTENER, you will get 10% off of a single user license. So just enter the code LISTENER, LISTENER, and no matter when you're listening to this, I will take 10% off. This is just for the single user license so that you can give it a try for a discount, and that is my thank you to you for listening to this podcast. Thank you so much. This podcast is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. To learn more, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.